It's Thursday, April 16th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.normal.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. I hope everyone had a fun tax day yesterday, if tax day can be fun. A lot of people got out and protested. I saw a lot of the news on those Tea Party protests, but of course, our protest was asking to be taxed. We're the only Americans asking to be taxed. And if you'll check out the Stash blog at stash.normal.org, you'll get one of my favorite videos of the year. That's one of our Stashers, ex-cannabis, who's living up in the Pocatello and Idaho Falls area of my home state of Idaho, a very conservative area, a very religious area of Idaho. And he went out on his own lonesome in the middle of the pouring rain with a sign asking to be taxed as a marijuana consumer. And it just really struck a chord with me because I've been that guy, that one guy in Idaho who seemed to be crying out, willing to stand up for this stuff. And, it's a really brave thing to do. And I appreciate you sending that video. And I encourage everyone to, send me your videos if you did manage to protest on tax day. Also wanted to point out how much of the Daily Audio Stash wouldn't be possible without these wonderful stashers who are contributing their time and their talents to help end adult marijuana prohibition in some small way by educating the masses. Mr. Spoff and Justice have been front pagers for quite a while now, and I've been promoting their posts up onto the main page, and it's been very, very helpful now that I've taken this job as National Outreach Coordinator. I appreciate all that hard work and data mining and news hawking out there. And I also posted something from the comments from one of our stashers, Mississippi Hippie, who brought me something that just warmed my heart because, I'm a kid who grew up in those 12-step, programs with my dad being an alcoholic and going through recovery and all. So, he posted what he called the 12-step program to cure our government's addiction to marijuana prohibition. And it's got all the typical, AA 12 steps, starting with, step number 1. We admitted we were powerless over tokers and that our lives were horrified because we can't stop them from toking. Step 3, made a decision to turn our decisions over to the will of the people. Step 5, admitted to our higher power, to ourselves and to the people, the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 8, made a list of the 20 million persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff because, we're good enough, we're smart enough, and doggone it, people like us. So thanks a lot, Mississippi Hippie. You made me laugh. It was wonderful. Check it out. It's out at the Stash blog at stash.normal.org. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, got some stories here. A great one from Americans from Safe Access who are challenging the scientific rationale for the illegality of cannabis. And with the Obama administration pledging to go back to a science-based administration, I can't see how this sort of argument can't win. After our hemp headlines, we've got our Southern California report with our good friend Terry Joyce, who brings a special guest, John Fugelsang, who was a writer for Bill Maher's show, appeared on Politically Incorrect, debating drug warrior Asa Hutchinson, as well as appearances on America's Funniest Home Videos and, well, lots of stuff. Check him out. That interview is in our Southern California report. Our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, features Rockin' Thursday with a band from right here in my hometown of Portland, Oregon, Hannah's Field. And in our second interview segment, once again, one of our special cannabis conversations where we talk to you, the people who are affected by this war on marijuana. A man by the name of Jeff, also from the state of Idaho, I guess it's Idaho Day today, who calls us from the Idaho State Penitentiary to talk about recording an album from behind bars. So we'll talk about that and more coming up today on your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Americans for Safe Access appeal to force government to tell the truth about medical marijuana. Americans for Safe Access filed suit in San Francisco 2 years ago under the Information Quality Act, a federal law that allows members of the public to seek and obtain correction of false or misleading government information that affects them. The organization said its members include seriously ill people who had been discouraged from using marijuana by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services' long-standing position that the drug has no medical value. The department declined to respond to the suit, saying the Drug Enforcement Administration was still considering the advocacy group's 2002 request to reconsider the status of marijuana. Congress created, quote, no judicially enforceable rights, end quote, when it passed the Information Quality Act in 2000, said Justice Department Attorney Elisa Klein. She said the law requires only that a federal agency review such requests from members of the public. Otherwise, she said, courts would be flooded with demands to second-guess government decisions on countless subjects. The government's position would make the law meaningless, argued Alan Morrison, the lawyer for Americans for Safe Access. Although some disputes are too subjective for court intervention, he said others can be measured objectively. For example, quote, 2 plus 2 is 4 and not 5, end quote, and the law gives judges a role in keeping the government on track. If I'm reading Ms. Klein correctly, she's asserting that the law that says the people have a right to challenge the accuracy and validity of scientific information produced by our government is only a suggestion. The government will produce information and will also be the sole judge of its quality? That's what you think the Information Quality Act is all about? Well, she really has no other tenable position. When the government's position for 39 years has been that the emperor is wearing a resplendent outfit of the finest silk and cotton, you can't really endorse a law that requires the government to point out he's naked. With the current administration pledging to put science first and address all previously ignored inconvenient truths, that naked emperor stands out like Darth Vader at a Klan rally. Mexican Congress debates legalizing marijuana. Mexico's Congress opened a 3-day debate Monday on the merits of legalizing marijuana for personal use, a policy backed by 3 former Latin American presidents who warned that a crackdown on drug cartels is not working. Although President Felipe Calderón has opposed their idea, the unprecedented forum shows legalizing marijuana is gaining support in Mexico amid brutal drug violence. It looks like Mexico is tired of dealing with the consequences of the American drug war. Watching your country deal with a bloodbath in the streets focuses the mind and the attention of real politicians that love their country. I can only wish that the U.S. Congress would take 3 days to discuss a legalization strategy, yet we can't even get 30 minutes here. The congressional discussion takes on a subject, quote, that had been taboo, end quote, in our country, said opposition lawmaker Javier Gonzalez, adding that his Democratic Revolution Party supports legalizing personal marijuana consumption. Quote, what we don't want is to criminalize youths for consuming or possessing marijuana, end quote, he said. Interior Department official Blanca Heredia said, quote, it's clear that a totally prohibitive policy has not been a solution for all ills. At the same time, it's illusory to imagine that complete legalization of marijuana would be a panacea, end quote. The goal of this debate is to clear the air about the subject and isn't expected to result in any formal bills, especially since Barack Obama is going to arrive the day after the debate concludes. Mexico flirted with legalization in 2006, but was intimidated by the U.S. to scrapping the measure. Let's hope our government is of a more open mind about it this time. If Mexico does introduce a legalization bill, the reaction of the U.S. could be very telling as to how the Obama administration will handle its own internal marijuana issues. DEA. Mexican drug violence is a sign of progress, not failure. When up becomes down and peace becomes war, you know you're talking to a prohibitionist. Today's wacko statement comes from Michelle Leonhardt, acting DEA administrator since the fall of 2007. Michelle Leonhardt, acting DEA administrator, said, quote, our view is that the violence we have been seeing is a signpost of the success our very courageous Mexican counterparts are having. The cartels are acting out like caged animals because they are caged animals, end quote. A signpost of our success. Let's take a closer look at the DEA signpost of our success, shall we? Mexican officials attributed 6,290 murders to drug-related violence, more than double the number in 2007. Several hundred of the victims were government officials, and many of their bodies were mutilated and placed where they would be found, to warn others against opposing cartel operations. The killing of several hundred government officials, not to mention 6,000 citizens, doesn't seem to be much of a victory. In the regulated marketplace, rival companies wage hostile takeovers and fortuitous mergers. When that market is illegal and the remedies of the marketplace are not allowed, the law of the jungle will prevail. Anthony Placido, DEA Assistant Administrator and Chief of Intelligence, said there were 3 broad categories of violence associated with the cartels: individuals vying for power within the 5 main cartels, the cartels fighting each other for control of lucrative aircraft landing rights and transit points, and the cartels fighting government officials who thwart their operations. There will most likely be an aggregation of power, as at least one of the cartels will be violently merged with another, as well as an aggregation of bribes, and the cartels that emerge will become better equipped and more efficient. Personally, I despise cartels and the power and leverage they yield. Hopefully, the murders will end soon and peace will return to the border towns, but I have no doubts that drugs will still find their way into the U.S. I'm also sure that there will be a cartel there to manage it.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death.
Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Asa Hutchinson says, public is in no mood to legalize marijuana. This came to me from Stashers on the Fresh Stash, who pointed out CNN's American Morning featured former drug czar Asa Hutchinson.
When it comes to the debate on legalization of marijuana, we can all have confidence in the greatness of our democracy. Ultimately, the voters decide the direction of our country. Thus far, there is no evidence that the public is in any mood to legalize marijuana or other currently illegal drugs.
From a CNN poll, same page online today, do you think the United States should legalize drugs? No way, 8%. Only marijuana, 45%. Yes, all drugs, 47%, out of over 3,000 people voting. And yes, of course, that's an online poll and not at all scientifically accurate, but you can check the graph on stash.normal.org that I've made of scientifically accurate polls from Gallup and Zogby and Rasmussen and the General Social Survey, CNN, CBS, New York Times, and the ACLU, showing that since 1989, there's been a 1% growth in approval of legalizing marijuana every year, and since Asa Hutchinson was the drug czar, a 6 to 10% overall rise in the public opinion that favors legalization of marijuana, currently standing at between 38% and 44%.
In Arkansas a few years back, a statewide ballot initiative couldn't even get on the ballot because the proponents could not gather enough signatures. Nationwide, recent ballot initiatives have focused on medical marijuana or enforcement policy. The advocates of legalization are trying to chip away on the fringes of the legalization debate, but they know there is not a sufficient popular movement for legalization.
Because a statewide ballot initiative cannot overturn a federal law. Who wants to put a couple of $1 million into a statewide initiative campaign that would be enjoined the minute it passes because of conflict with federal law? Medical marijuana, lowest priority, and decriminalization aren't the fringes of the legalization debate. They are the only possible tactics at the state and local level under an oppressive federal law.
Parents are in no mood to make another harmful drug more accessible and socially acceptable for the youth.
84% of high school seniors say it is fairly easy to get pot. That means in a classroom of 20 seniors, and don't laugh teachers, pretend our classrooms only have 20 kids per. In a classroom of 20 seniors, 17 of them can probably go out and get a baggie of weed within an hour. Is it your contention, Mr. Hutchinson, that a legalized marijuana market where adults have to go to an over 21 store and show ID, that will mean those other 3 hapless kids will finally be able to score? As for more socially acceptable, all the data on teens' perception of risk, availability, and acceptability have risen since the focus of marijuana in the war on drugs began back in the first Bush administration. Pot is all over popular movies, TV, music, and magazines. 42% of American high school seniors have tried marijuana. Is it your contention that legalized marijuana will mean more of them will try it? Because, after all, it is tolerated, or socially acceptable, you might say, for adults in the Netherlands, and only 19% of their high school seniors have tried it.
The current argument is that legalization is the right way to solve the cartel violence in Mexico. I disagree. If you accept that argument, then we should legalize cocaine to reduce the cartel violence in Colombia. That is not the right logic, and the violence will continue.
These are the rhetorical tools they've got left, folks. They can't bring up gateway drug anymore without being laughed off the stage. They can't deny medicinal applications for marijuana because it keeps winning elections by 2-to-1 margins. Hutchinson begins with what I call the "these are not the droids you're looking for" argument. Yeah, sure, you think legalizing marijuana is a perfectly valid solution, but nobody else around you does. You're all alone in that crazy thinking because America doesn't want to legalize marijuana, and you're un-American for thinking it's a good idea. The other tool is to lump in marijuana with drugs. It's funny how legalization of alcohol to reduce cartel violence in America didn't mean we had to legalize cocaine and marijuana. Oh, wait, cocaine and marijuana were still federally legal then. Oh well. But somehow legalization of marijuana means we must legalize cocaine. And the unspoken implication of the word legalization means marijuana, crack, coke, heroin, meth, acid, shrooms, and ecstasy will all be available at the front counter of the 7-Eleven next to the Slim Jims and the Snickers bars. Notice that it's always about opposing the legalization of marijuana. It's never about supporting the prohibition of marijuana. It's easier to get people to fear an undefinable future catastrophe than to get them to support an untenable present reality. The slippery slope is required because few people are scared by legal pot anymore. There are hundreds of thousands of legal pot smokers on America's West Coast, and their businesses and government all still seem to function. Again, try not to laugh, Californians. But cocaine equals Tony Montana equals guns and violence equals crackheads, and that scares the hell out of us.
The only thing legalization will accomplish is to increase the use of harmful drugs in the United States. The cartels will just move to another illegal drug to make their cash, and if there is not a current market for that drug, then they will work to create that market.
Wow! Mexican drug cartels are the most incredible entrepreneurs in the world. When marijuana is legalized and 60% of their cash flow is stopped, they're going to immediately make that up by creating a market for another drug. Somehow, they are going to replace the market of 22 million adult Americans who use marijuana at least once per year with a market of 5.3 million adult Americans who use cocaine once per year, 2.3 million who use stimulants like meth and others, and the 350,000 who use heroin at least once per year. They would have to add 3 times the number of people currently using those drugs to make up for the 22 million now legal marijuana users, and that's assuming 22 million new coke, meth, and smack users would generate the same demand and profits as marijuana users. Somehow, when all 22 million of us are able to get good weed at decent prices in adults-only stores, 22 million more of us who don't currently use coke, meth, and heroin are going to start using. All because the Mexican drug cartels must have some incredible marketing plan that will make people suddenly love coke, meth, and heroin. Oh, wait, I know. Maybe they'll just invent a new drug. Maybe Gleamanex.
So here's the deal. We've got this new president who seems really cool. I mean, the guy's well-spoken, he's open-minded, he seems to listen to people, and he's extremely well-educated. I mean, he graduated from Harvard Law School. But this is a guy who's admitted to smoking marijuana, that illegal leaf that just ruins people's lives. How could the president of the United States have ever done such a thing? Maybe because he knew it was less addictive than both alcohol and nicotine, and knew it can be consumed responsibly. But it's probably been a while since he smoked a joint. So if I had one thing to say to Barack Obama about cannabis, it would probably be something like, "Hey dude, I'm one of 80 million people in your country who has smoked marijuana, and so are you." Or maybe I would say over 700,000 people were arrested in this last year for marijuana-related charges. Or something like, let's re-examine this law altogether. Or possibly that $1.3 billion is spent annually fighting marijuana, not including the cost of prison management and construction. Or I might just end up saying, hey man, you know the facts. Let's fix this mess.
Weed.
That's Hooey Valley, hooey ha.
Weed.
Where any office boy or young mechanic
Now it's time for a report from the epicenter of American cannabis culture with our Southern California correspondent. You know her from ComedyNation.com and her appearance as a finalist on Season 1 of NBC's Last Comic Standing. It's our friend, cannabis comedian and marijuana activist, the lovely and talented Terry Joyce. Hey, Terry, what's happening?
A lot of exciting things are going on. I just have something interesting that happened recently. You know, I've talked a lot about being a part of the Gay Pride Parade that we've done here. Yeah, we're actually gearing up to do another one. So we're in that. But I have these. I think some people, when you're in the marijuana movement, you know, they think that you're kind of like an airhead, or you know, we don't quite have our stuff together.
Yeah.
And I have these platforms that from the parade in my backyard. And finally, this one guy came over to buy the platforms, and I was having one of those days where I kind of felt like kind of out of the box. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if you go through times where you're like, man, am I the only person that thinks like this? You know,
that happens all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, God, am I so odd? And so the guy showed up, and he was wearing a kilt. And I was like, oh, great. I go, hi, come on in. And he was kind of like a Renaissance guy, and they bought the stages for this show called Repo, the genetic musical. It's kind of a musical where it's about people who they get their organs repoed if they can't pay their health care bill.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it's a musical, and they do it at this theater, and the actors go up and act it like Rocky Horror.
Oh, how fun.
So he comes over and you know, with a kilt, and you know, he pays like for part of it, right? But not for like all of it. And he's, you know, comes back a few days later, and I was in a hurry, and he took like, you know, 5 of the platforms and never paid for it. And so I'm thinking, God, did he just think that we were just like potheads? That we're just going to go, look, man, go ahead, you don't owe $75. So I think we're going to go to the show, and in the middle of a musical about people having their organs repoed. We're just going to go and like repo the stage right on the show.
There you go. That would be fitting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It would be, you know.
Oh, boy.
And then when he had a kilt, my mom called me, and I go, oh, she goes, what are you doing? I go, yeah, this guy, he's coming to get the stages, and, you know, he's wearing a kilt. And I just said it like matter of fact, and she's like, wait a second, Terry, he's wearing a kilt? Like, I guess, like, that's so odd when a man, like, somewhere wears a dress. Everybody just kind of freaks out about it.
You know, I've seen a lot of guys in kilts up here in the Pacific Northwest, but maybe that's a Northwest thing.
Yeah, no, in Southern California, you rarely see a man walking around in a kilt. Yeah.
Oh, well, Terry, you know, one of the things I always like talking to you about here, you know, we talk a lot about marijuana and, you know, the serious issues with, you know, we get DJ on the show and we talk about these raids and really serious stuff. But you know, every now and then I always like to talk to you because you have so many good friends in the comedy world who, and it seems to me, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that by and large, most of the comedy world is very supportive of marijuana, both recreationally and medically. Would you say that?
I would say that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
I think that all the funny comedians smoke weed from time to time.
All the funny ones. Okay. There we go. Well, let's talk to one of the funny comedians. You've got a special guest for us today.
I do have a special guest. This comedian is someone that I look up to. He's pretty amazing, and you know, he's been part of the Bill Maher Show for quite a long time. America's Funniest Home Videos. He's very up and coming, and or you know, he's already here. We do Comedy Nation together, the Free Speech Show, and The Week That Was. And he's a huge marijuana advocate and has a wonderful take on it. And I want to introduce John Fugelsang.
Hi, John.
Thank you so much.
How you doing?
Hello. Thank you, Terry. That was a lovely introduction.
Well, thank you.
So, John, you're down there in Southern California working the comedy scene. Terry told us a little bit about your background, and of course, I'm really excited to hear about your work with Bill Maher. He's a member of the advisory board for NORML. Is that how you came around to marijuana advocacy, or has this always been a thing for you?
Yeah, it's always been a thing for me. My mother was a nurse with geriatric patients, and I grew up, around a lot of people who were in a lot of agony, and my mother was sort of like the family nurse. So whenever someone was dying, they would come to live with us, and growing up, my house was like the family hospice. So I've been around death and suffering since I was a child, and to me, I relate it all to a kind of a spiritual perspective that the Prohibition movement is all about denying medicine to sick people, and I don't think there's anything moral in it. I think it's an insult to God to prolong one's suffering. And when you look at the history of marijuana prohibition, morality and history and the law is on the side of decriminalization.
Absolutely.
Ganja, whatever you want to call it, cannabis, has been in this country a lot longer than white people. Washington grew it. Jefferson grew it. Ben Franklin started our first colonial printing press using hemp paper. Back then, it was as American as apple pie, and everybody knew if you smoked the top flowery part of the plant, you'd want to eat a lot of apple pies. And nowadays, we would lock these guys up if we ever locked up rich white males. But back in the colonial days, cannabis was used as a painkiller. And in those days, the biggest drug problem was the same as is the biggest drug problem now, and that's alcohol.
Yeah, I hear you there. And is this something that you bring up a lot in your comedy routines?
Sometimes, yeah. It depends on the house. Some rooms will be more receptive to this than others.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you make fun of potheads, an audience, even no matter how conservative, will let you get away with talking about anything. But the fact of the matter is, it was only made illegal in 1937, and when they made it illegal, the American Medical Association officially protested on the record in D.C. So you should tell all your friends that being pro-legalized cannabis is the conservative point of view. It's only been illegal for 72 years. It was legal for a lot longer than that.
Yep, I always make that point. I originally come from Idaho, where all my arguments against prohibition had to come from kind of a conservative viewpoint. As you're doing your work now, and you're in California, obviously a medical marijuana state, what do you see as the future of marijuana law reform, and do you see the end of prohibition close on the horizon?
Well, it's all going to depend on how people handle it in California. So far, it's going really well. There's always a chance that some potheads are going to blow it. You can go on Craigslist and see people trying to sell their stash. There's a lot of irresponsible behavior that's cropped up around it, and if the responsible users can curtail that, I think California is going to be a real role model for the rest of the country. And quite frankly, from an economic point of view, it's going to create jobs. And, the only two safe growth industries we have left are medical cannabis and tattoo removal. Well, I think the rest of the country is going to have to follow suit.
And if you've got a tattoo of some medical cannabis, you kill two birds with one stone right there, huh?
Absolutely.
Now,
it's kind of astounding, and it's worth noting that it's a states' rights issue, and you can bring this up to your conservative friends all the time. They want to defend the Civil War and the Southern secession over states' rights. Well, that's exactly what this is. And you can also remind your Southern friends that it was a Democrat, your conservative friends, it was a Democrat, Bill Clinton, who squashed states' rights back in '96 when we first tried to get medical cannabis in this state.
Yeah, a lot of people, that's something I always try to stress here on the stash is the nonpartisan or egalitarian nature of both parties in the war on drugs. Bill Clinton's administration arrested 4.5 million potheads, and George W. Bush's arrested 5.4 million. That's not a whole lot of difference between the two.
And let's be honest, we know that Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama have used cannabis in their life, right? Like, we know it. Two of them have admitted it, and one has all but admitted it. And the whole thing is, if they really thought it was a sin, if they really thought that it was this detrimental to society and this horrible a behavior, they would surrender themselves and turn themselves in. Themselves.
We'll see that.
We know it's not a problem. It's politically expedient to ignore it, but don't ever forget, if they thought it was a sin, they turn themselves in.
That's right. Now, John, tell us a little bit about yourself and what's happening in your career right now. If people want to catch your shows or see the stuff you've been in, where can they go? What can they do?
Oh, I worked on America's Funniest Home Videos as Terry mentioned, although after this interview I won't be invited to the reunion show.
We know Bob Saget. He's totally anti-marijuana, right? Sure.
I'm not quite sure about that. I worked for VH1 for a number of years and did specials there with George Harrison and Paul McCartney, and as an actor I've been on shows like CSI and Providence. I have a film coming out that I just shot in Seattle with Eric Roberts called The Whole Truth. I do a show called Water Cooler on TV Guide Network. That's a comedy look at pop culture. I had a solo show that just ran off Broadway in New York that's going back off Broadway later this year, and I'm on Facebook.
Wow. So much for that amotivational syndrome. You seem to be really working.
Pardon me?
I said you seem to be really working.
You got to keep busy. I live in Southern California and in New York, and people in New York are amazed when they hear about what's happening here in Southern California. And, are there abuses of the medical cannabis system? Of course there are. Are there doctors that just, will write a note to anybody? Sure there are, yes. But, that's going to exist in any kind of system. The important thing is that it's happening in an orderly, professional, dignified way. The dispensaries don't want to be closed down, so they're very responsible. And people who have, I know people who don't have migraines anymore because of this. I mean, there are thousands of people in California receiving medical cannabis for their conditions, and most of the pharmacies, to their credit, provide edibles for people who don't want smoke in their lungs, because let's not forget, smoking's not good for you. Mm-hmm. There's lots of alternative ways of consuming the medicine.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and you're in probably the most exciting place in the country with regard to marijuana law reform down there in Southern California. We're always following it, and I agree with you. I get those reports from the East Coast and talk to people there, and they think it's Shangri-La out here. They cannot believe what's happening. It's just amazing, and we thank you for being a part of it. Before we wrap things up, I want to give Terry, give you a chance to if you have anything left you want to say to the audience.
I was just thinking about, you made the one comment, John, where you said, after the show, I will be going to the reunion for America's Funniest Home Videos. And to me, I just, I wish for a day where we don't have to say stuff like that, where marijuana doesn't have the stigma of I guess I won't be going to that party, and it's more accepted. I hope that happens.
I hope so too. You're very right. And I think that day has begun. I think that, it is a more progressive community. I do think that the majority of Americans would support medical marijuana at this point just to help balance their state's budgets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that possibly one of the positive outcomes of this terrible recession may be the debate is going to heat up and people will discuss it because it is the moral option.
Absolutely true. And we'll be following that here on the Daily Audio Stash. Terry Joyce and John Fugelsang, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the show, and good luck to both of you in your careers and the rest of your lives.
I want to say one thing, can I add, is that John and I are on a show that we just taped for Comedy Nation, and the subject matter was medical marijuana, why or why not. And I know that you've linked, Comedy Nation to the Audio Stash website, and I encourage those to check it out. Because it was a really good show, and the comics were really solid, and they came from different angles, and I think it's something worth watching. So check that out.
All right, ComedyNation.com. We'll have the link up at today's post on the Daily Audio Stash. And hey, Terry, thanks for all the great guests and joining us every week. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I'm just grateful that I have friends that say yes when I ask them.
All right, thanks a lot, John.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye, guys.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker Tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. It's Rockin' Thursday, and today we smoke a little pot with Portland's own Hannah's Field, winners of 3 2008 Marijuana Music Awards. Hannah's Field bring love, light, and spirit to listeners with their magical blend of gypsy reggae, fairy, folk, African earth, and great rock music. Hannah's Field have shared the stage with well-known artists, performed at numerous festivals and hempfests, and have recently released a new CD, Warriors of Love. Hannah has been described as an updated, confident Janis Joplin with an optimistic edge. Hannah's Field will inspire you to feel rhythmic tranquility and dance barefoot in green summer grass. For more information about Hannah's Field, visit hannahsgroove.com and myspace.com Hannah's Music. And registered stashers, you can get an MP3 download of this song. It's Hannah's Field with Smoke a Little Pot.
Broken down, your belly aches, can't pay your rent. Listen to my song, smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Take life by the hand. Time is short, let's live for a laugh. Imagine what we can be, releasing fear from our reality. That's why I'm telling you to smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Take life by the hand. Time is short, let's live for a laugh. Imagine what we can be, releasing fear from our reality. That's why I'm telling you to smoke a little pot, drink a little wine. Everything will be just fine. Smoke a little pot, drink a little wine.
80% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.norml.org.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that intersect nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement and prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Cannabis Conversations. Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we're always fighting for an end to adult marijuana prohibition, and a lot of people don't think very much about the issue. It's sometimes considered an unimportant topic, but there's no topic more important to the people whose lives have been directly affected by this prohibition, the injustice that has been done to them. And we have one such victim of the war on marijuana joining us today from Idaho, and want to welcome Jeff to the show. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, thanks.
Would you like to tell our listeners where you're joining us from in Idaho today?
Yeah, I'm in Idaho State Correctional Facility currently. I'm actually at a community work center now. I'm about a year and a half into a 3-year sentence. Right now, I just spend my days, I go to work and come back and spend the evenings here, but I'm at the correctional facility.
And I understand you're up for parole soon, so we're not going to talk a whole lot about your case or anything like that, but can you tell our listeners, what has been the result of this your marijuana arrest?
You mean all the legal consequences?
Well, as far as, you're obviously doing time, but also is there any other losses or effects from the arrest and the conviction?
Yeah, there's, it affects every aspect of your life, just being arrested. But, I ended up losing my house because since I was arrested at my house, they get to take that.
Right.
For example, if I was arrested in my car, they would have taken the car, but since they were able to arrest me at my house, they were able to take my house from me. So, lost a good job that I had, because obviously I couldn't work there from prison, and, lots of legal bills, but, it just doesn't really ever seem to end. It just goes on, and I'll probably spend, a couple of years even after I get out dealing with a lot of these legal consequences that have happened. So.
Sure. And that brings up the point that a lot of people don't consider, is that even if it is a short sentence and you get out and your life goes on, there's still all these lifelong effects from having been convicted of this marijuana issue.
Absolutely. Even when I do get released, I still will be under some kind of supervision and, won't be able to move around. I won't be able to travel around, at least between states. I have to call in and ask them if I can leave the county, things like that. In Idaho they have you taking a lot of classes and stuff as well when you get out. So most of your free time is pretty much, eaten away with the things you have to do when you get out of here too.
Now, Jeff's story comes to me by way of all sorts of interesting circumstances. Me having worked here at NORML and promoting music on the Stash, I got an email from your sister promoting your music, and it turns out that both you and I have friends of friends that have worked together in the Boise music scene, so we've probably never met face to face, but I thought that was interesting. And that brings me to this album that you've recorded, which is kind of, a tale of triumph over adversity here in the face of these circumstances. Tell the folks about your album and how you managed to get this recorded.
Well, the album, it was a struggle. When I got arrested, the first thing that, came to mind wasn't really making the album, but probably about a month afterwards, I started realizing that making an album was something I really wanted to do, and I thought right then and there was probably the only time I was going to be able to do it. I didn't think that I would ever get a chance after I got out of here because there would be so much of my time is going to, try to be rebuilding my life. I thought, well, now really is the perfect time if you can say that, that's perfect. But I thought, we have the resources, and I had a lot of friends come together and say, we want to help you build, make this album as well. So, just tried to get everybody together to do it, but, of course, we had lots of problems. We had money problems. The studio that I was recording at was completely booked, so we had to start getting creative with that. We ended up, finding some people that, were working on the album pro bono, and, we ended up recording from, I think, 5 in the morning till about 9 in the morning when the studio was closed, because, most people who play rock don't tend to get up at 5 in the morning. So we had to start looking at ways to get this thing done in the short amount of time we had, and there was a bunch of great musicians that all wanted to participate as well, and I thought, come on in, we'll lay down some stuff, and we'll just get this thing done. And, every time we got, it looked like we were going to run out of time, we just all got our heads together and said, well, how are we going to get around this? We've only got so much time here. I remember when I'd come in to play some guitar tracks, and we'd be joking. We'd say, okay, you only got one chance to get this right, and maybe 2 if you're really lucky. And, of course, we joked about it, but really, if we couldn't get it done, we all knew that we were just going to run out of time, and so it was a lot of stress while we were trying to have fun with it, but somehow we managed to get it done. I ended up finishing it 2 days before I was sentenced. I came in and finished the last part, got done on Friday, and had the weekend, and I was sentenced on Monday. I remember walking out of the studio, and they said, well, have a good weekend. And that was that.
Wow. So talk about recording under pressure. Wow. And so after you get all the recordings done, you're sentenced, and then your friends and family continue on the post-production after you're in jail, I guess?
Yeah. The real time crunch for me was to get everything I needed to do, which was playing the guitar and singing and basically getting everything I wanted artistic-wise, down for them to do. And then after I was gone, since I was able to complete that, we had a few other loose ends to wrap up, and the studio spent the time, mixing and mastering it and getting ready for the final product. And then, I had a couple other, friends that, worked on the album cover, and a couple of the details like that, the artwork, putting down the credits, just organizing everything. That way I had a couple of friends put up, they got my website started. My sister started working on, a marketing plan and, some promotion plans. My parents kind of headed up the finances of, what I had left, and they organized that. Lots of people, just said, just tell me what to do, and we'll figure out a way to get it done. So.
Wow. That's great that everybody came together to help. And let's talk a little bit about the music itself. What's the name of the album? What kind of music? And, where can people find it?
Well, the name of the band is Various Lazy. The name of the album is Lame, Sick, or Lazy, and you can find it all on www.variouslazy.com. There's links to the various sites that it's sold at. You can either buy CD or digital copies, and I turned out pretty happy with it. I got a chance to listen to it in here, and I was pretty happy with it. I think everybody will be pretty happy with it when they hear it. I haven't got any bad takes on it yet, so.
Well, what kind of tracks do you got on the album? Is this rock? Is it,
It's everything. Everything that I've played over the years. I've got rock, bluegrass, jazz, blues. I've played in a lot of bands, and I just wanted to come together with something that, had all these styles in it that I played and enjoyed. And I think you'll find that it's kind of a fusion album of sorts that, I'll be playing blues and bluegrass, and I'll find a way to put those two together. Same thing with jazz and rock and bluegrass. I'll just find just little ways to put these things together to make what we call various lazy.
Yeah. Well, we'll have the links up at our blog at stash.normal.org so people can find more information on Various Lazy and pick up the album and help to support Jeff, one of our brothers behind bars, for this stupid marijuana prohibition. We wish you the best of luck in your upcoming parole. And before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience?
Yeah, just keep on doing what you're doing. Have a good time and live your life, because, it's obviously precious. I know that everyone's got the same thing on their mind, probably on your station here, but, it's a blessing to be out there, and, hope everybody enjoys the album at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Good luck on everything.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for downloading the Normal Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.normal.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another one of our cannabis quotes, this one from the 1972 Schaefer Commission report for President Nixon on marijuana in the United States, which concluded, quote, "Our youth cannot understand why society chooses to criminalize a behavior with so little visible ill effect or adverse social impact. Disrespect for the possession laws fosters a disrespect for laws and the system in general. On top of this is the distinct impression among the youth that some police may use the marijuana laws to arrest people they don't like for other reasons." End quote. The war on drugs, and specifically the war on marijuana, is the longest war in United States history, taking 37 years, longer than all of the time in all the 20th and 21st century wars combined. It's time to end adult marijuana prohibition, and with your help, we'll get it done. Thanks for downloading the podcast. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.